The ancient mystical order Rosicrucis, also known as the Rosicrucian Order, AMORC, is a worldwide cultural, educational, and philosophical organization that is perpetuating profound and practical teachings of the Rosicrucians. These teachings, as passed down and added to over the centuries from ancient Egypt to Europe and now all over the world, pertain to the mysteries of the universe, nature, and humans themselves. The Rosicrucian Library is a source of spiritual wisdom and insights that include the important writings by the respected imperators of the order, such as Dr. Harvey Spencer Lewis, Ralph M. Lewis, and Christian Bernard. Today we'll continue learning more about the different stages of the mystical life as they were in the past and in our modern world. In the chapter titled The Mystical Life, from his book The Sanctuary of Self, Frater Ralph M. Lewis elaborates on the importance of interconnectedness and balance across all levels of existence in one's mystical life, from the material to the spiritual. According to Islamic mysticism, or the mysticism of the Muslims, which incidentally is a highly organized and inspiring system of instruction, there are 3 stages of the mystical life. Certain aspects are veiled in the beginning and in the middle. In the beginning period, external things, the things of the world, and temporal interests so occupy the consciousness, according to Islamic mysticism, that the inner sense, or God, is veiled from the consciousness. Man then has little concern for the spiritual values of the divine impulses. Later, in the middle period of existence, a transition occurs. The world becomes veiled because man has a sudden awakening. He has realization of his spiritual nature, and he takes such a delight in it that he adjusts his whole thought and living in accordance with his newfound and newly realized experience. He is inclined to neglect practical living, the realities of his everyday world, and so the veil again comes before his consciousness. This middle period of the mystical life is called by the Islamic mystics the period of intoxication. It is a period of spiritual ecstasies, an afflatus, inspiration, when the consciousness takes wing and transcends all worldly interests, sometimes to the detriment of its welfare. In the final stage of the mystical life, however, the created things, the things of the world, no longer veil God from the consciousness of the mystic. He is quite aware of the nature of God, but also his realization of God no longer veils his consciousness of worldly things. God is seen as the creator and the universe as created things. In other words, in the final stage of the mystic's life, a balance is struck and a man has an equal appreciation of the law and the manifestation of the law. This final stage of the mystical life is appropriately called sobriety by Islamic mystics. It is the soberness of understanding, the temperance of understanding. It is neither the extreme objective consciousness nor the extreme of divine consciousness. Traditional mysticism may be reduced to these fundamental principles. The soul is the spiritual self of man. The soul is part of a universal soul, a soul which permeates the entire universe. That soul is God. The material world and the physical body are the negative side of this positive, absolute soul, or God, which permeates the universe, a sort of imperfection, a falling off from the goodness. And when the soul is embodied in a physical form or body, man as a unity of both soul and body is not perfect. The body, the material, must be brought into harmony with the soul, the immaterial. Man will be confined to a body in various lives as long as he permits the temptations, the desires and appetites to dominate his nature. He must struggle to overcome them, to suppress them, to give himself over entirely to those spiritual urges within his own nature. These urges are the dictates of conscience, which finds its expression in ethical, moral, and religious conduct. Modern mysticism, which is based upon these old fundamental principles, does not state that the material body and the physical mundane world are without foundation or existence, that they are non-entities, non-beings, or evil. It does state that they are unreliable and that we cannot perceive their true nature. They constantly change, as do the senses of man, and may not be tomorrow as we perceive them today. Therefore, no credence should be given to their manifestations. Modern mysticism recognizes them, however, as part of the universal plan, but imperfect, that is, less comprehensive in contrast to the mind or the intelligence of God, the Absolute. A study and an examination into this material, mundane world is advocated so that man may try within his limited power to regulate it, to prevent it from controlling or dominating him. Mysticism advocates intensive study and learning so that man may know the relationship of this mundane, material, imperfect phase to the perfect Absolute or God. Thus, modern mysticism declares that there is a duality of the universe in effect, but that in essence it is one. All things are of that one, although there are stages of its perfection. The material world and its manifestations are not considered as perfect as the spiritual world, yet they are of it. The duality enters into the conception by declaring, on the one hand, that the soul, a part of the absolute whole, is good, and that all else in contrast, even though of it, is by graduated degrees less perfect. It behooves the individual, therefore, who declares himself to be a student of modern mysticism and an aspirant to the mystical life, to make a very thorough study of such terms and subjects as the Absolute, spiritual, being, material realm, free agency, and the scientific attitude of mind. These fundamentals, and a few more like them, are the foundation stones of his philosophy if he purports to be a mystical philosopher. He who has a thorough knowledge of these fundamentals will not find it difficult to assemble and reassemble them into a system that will help him to reach his goal in a rational manner. That goal we presume to be that inner satisfaction and attunement which the real mystics declared constituted a sense of God. Bright-minded viewers, it was a pleasure to be in your kind presence on today's Words of Wisdom titled From the Rosicrucian Orders, the Sanctuary of Self, on the Mystical Life, Part 3 of 3.